Dan Illman, Matt Bernier, the feature race at Santa Anita on Saturday is the Grade 3 Wilshire, going a mile on the turf for fillies and mares. Check out this new DRF Bets sign-up bonus offer. Get $150 in risk-free bets. Learn all the terms and conditions at drf.com/bet. Let's meet this big competitive field getting set to go in the Grade 3 Wilshire. We're filming this on Wednesday afternoon. We don't have morning line odds yet, but let's talk about two horses that figure to get bet. Down towards the rail is the number 1, Ollie's Candy, who is just so good as a 3-year-old filly. I thought she ran great in the Del Mar Oaks to get beat a neck. I thought she ran great in the San Clemente to get beat a neck. She's a graded stakes winner on dirt, and last time out in the Gamely. Just consider that she was 5-1 behind the streaking Vasilika. With everything going against her, she deserves another chance.
5-1 against Vasilika and Rimska coming in for Chad on the East Coast. So she took some money into the teeth of those two fillies and mares. Both had the recency edge over Ollie's Candy. Ollie's Candy going out to 9 furlongs off of a really, really long layoff. Anybody that paid attention to our previews last year over the summer knows how much I love Ollie's Candy. I think she just runs no matter what the surface is, no matter what the situation is. And I agree with you. I think you're just supposed to give her the benefit of the doubt for that Gamely first start off of a long layoff. Now this will be her second start back. I believe the mile is probably a little bit better for her than the 9. I don't think 9 is a distance that she's incapable of running well at, but I do think she's probably better between 8 and 8.5. And I just expect, in a race like this where it looks like, I said to you before we started, it feels like we kind of know what most of these girls are. Ollie's Candy's still relatively lightly raced, and I just happen to think her best is probably better than anybody else's best.
Good trip probably coming from the inside post as well. I think she's the horse to beat along with the mare on the outside, and that is the number 11, Tap 2. It's just been a shame that Tap's career has been interrupted by so many injuries. I thought she ran well in the Unzip Me and in the Autumn Miss in 2017. She went away for about a year and a half. And that return race on April the 14th, that race was populated by horses coming back from long layoffs. And I think they were all at sort of different points of sharpness going into that race. Cause for Commotion was making her return to the races. She was prepping. She came back to win the Santa Barbara with a 94 buyer. Ahimsa was coming back off a little bit of a layoff. She won that race, then ran third in the Gamely with a 91 buyer. Tapped, I think, was just taken to the back of the pack by Rafael Bejarano, and I think the connections wanted to see if she could still run. And she was last behind a slow pace, angled widest, and she was coming at the end of that race. It was such a good performance that Baltus tested her on the dirt against LaForce and Paradise Woods last time out. This post is lousy, Matt, but I still think she can run a bit.
Brutal outside draw. It's going to be interesting to see what Drayden Van Dyke can work out there from post 11. I agree with you. I think she can still run. The thing that I had difficulty with, and I brought it up talking about her in the Santa Maria going into it a little bit, I don't know what her best game is. I mean, you go through and take a look. She's run 4 times on a fast main surface, 1 time on a wet track, twice on synth, and 5 times on the grass. And she has a number of good efforts sort of littered in throughout those. I just don't know what her best game is right now at this point in her career. Maybe getting back to the grass, maybe this is actually where she'll do her best. But again, that outside draw and at a short number, if I had to put it this way, but choose between the 2 favorites, I'd go to the inside as opposed to the outside.
We have last year's Wilshire winner in the lineup, and that's the number 2, Storm the Hill, who after that race made hay going down the hill. And the Senator Ken Maddie to close out her 4-year-old campaign. It was an in-out trip. She was a little bit late to change leads. Painting Corners did all the dirty work in that race, and Storm the Hill was able to benefit. Now, after that race, D'Amato thought, well, maybe we'll wait till sort of opening day of the Santa Anita winter meet. We'll get a lot of down the hill races. It seemed like he was pointing for those races. This layoff is a little bit longer than anticipated. It's been about 7 months, but she loves Santa Anita and she can win at the mile. The question is she going to be ready to rumble fresh against a field that seems better than last year's Wilshire?
Yeah, I agree. Those are kind of the things that made me a little bit leery. I think she's in with a big chance in this race. I picked her 3rd or 4th. I'll take a look at my numbers. But the idea of being gone for as long as she has been, and a flat mile, you know what? It's not a distance that is unbelievably sort of impossible for her off the bench. But I kind of liked the idea of, if you're going to get a race into her, have it be shorter and then stretch her out as opposed to just throw her right to the wolves. I think she's got a big chance in here. I agree it's a tougher field than the one she beat last year, but If she's ready to go, I wouldn't be surprised at all if she ran well.
Let's throw up the time form U.S. pace projector. And the number 9, Ippodamia's Girl, is a curious pace play for trainer Andrew Lerner. Remember that this filly was pretty good as a 2-year-old. She won the Blue Norther on New Year's Eve, and then she just only ran 3 times as a 3-year-old. Just lots of things went wrong. She came back off a long layoff last time out. She was 21-1 in that race. She showed big speed. She cleared off to the lead, and she kept right on going. The 5th place finisher Mirth came back to run second a couple of times, once in a stake. If they leave Ippodamia's Girl alone, she's got the back class to make them pay, perhaps at a price again.
Yeah, she's got enough figs on her page, particularly that most recent run, that, like you say, if they give her an inch, she might take a mile and get really brave out there. I'm expecting someone to keep her honest up front. I don't think she's just going to be able to waltz out there on the front end. But we've seen crazier things happen, and sometimes, whether it's connections or jockeys or however they play it, sometimes they just disrespect the speed. And if you let this one go, she can win.
The one that might keep her honest is right next door, the number 10, A Little Bit Me, stretching out off several short sprint races. Last time out in the Unbridled Sydney, she pulled off an upset over a nice turf mare. Morticia came back to win with a 94 Beyer speed figure. I thought John Velasquez gave her a beautiful ride. Saved ground, found the hole in between horses, shot on through. If you look at A Little Bit Me's form, she doesn't stretch out often, but when she does, she shows speed, and that could be bad news for Ippodamia's Girl.
Yeah, that's part of what I was alluding to, figuring that somebody's got to keep Ippodamia's Girl honest on the front. I assume it's going to be A Little Bit Me on the stretch out and distance. You brought it up when she's run longer. She's been forwardly placed. I don't particularly love her at a mile. I think this is a little bit of a long distance for her. I prefer her going shorter, but if nothing else, I think she at least ensures that the pace is honest up front and maybe helps the horses coming from off of it.
Let's talk a little bit about Don't Blame Judy, who's considered up close to the pace in third. She's in very good form for a very underrated barn. And last time out, she sat back off of a hot pace, she benefited from it, and she was able to win. And usually when you see those situations, career best Beyer speed figure, perhaps pace aided, you're a little bit worried, especially when they step up in class. But 2 starts back, she showed that she was able to adapt to the pace situation. She could stay close where the time form U.S. pace projector had her. She ran well that day behind a sharp horse, and last time out, the horse that ran 7th came back to win with an 84 Beyer.
Yeah, and the 3rd place finisher came back and earned an 82 in her next start as well. So the form, at least, of that race has held up relatively well. And I think it's important what you brought up, that she's shown at least the versatility, the ability to be a little bit closer if the pace is a little bit on the softer side. I think she's a little bit on the light side as far as numbers are concerned. But again, if you're looking for what's going to be a much more appetizing price than anything that you're going to get on some of the shorter priced favorites, maybe she's interesting.
Gliding by, another horse that's handled the mile in the past, has won 2 out of her last 3 races. Note that she was in for the 62.5 tag in both of those races, and both of those races were going shorter. Do you believe at this point in her career, and she's 6 years old, that she is more effective sprinting?
Yes, it was a scenario where I've liked her all along. I liked her when she was a 2-year-old, thought she did some really good things, but it just feels like as more and more time goes by, maybe she is that sort of off the pace sprinter that we've come to see. It's one of those things. Sometimes you see those horses, maybe they can't quite see out the mile, or maybe they're not quite as effective. You get that slight turn back and you're going to come from a little bit off of the pace, but boy, you've got that bottom, you've got that finish. To me, that's kind of what gliding by has turned into.
The 3 Simply Breathless got a wonderful trip in her North American debut up at Golden Gate Fields for trainer Neil Drysdale, saved ground, came out turning into the stretch, and was able to score despite hopping back to her left lead late. Maybe that was just an effect of the long layoff. We had not seen her since September. Timeform US, though, they believe she's going to have to do it a lot different this time around. She won't be sitting the pocket here. She's going to be coming from last on the rail.
And I think she's facing arguably better horses this time around. I understand Zafina is a nice mare. She came back and she earned an 84 in her next start. But I think when you consider just the number of horses in this race alone, but also the quality of them, I think Simply Breathless is going to have a much more difficult time. Not suggesting she can't run well, but I think she's going to have to run a heck of a lot better if she's going to win.
I think Meal Ticket's a little bit of a sleeper, Matt. That's the number 5. She was 5th in the Gamely last time out. She finished ahead of the horse down towards the rail, Ollie's Candy. She ran 2nd in the Royal Heroine behind Vasilika 3 starts back. So she has proven herself against some pretty top horses, and she's run some nice races at the mile as well. Maybe she's not the most prolific winner in the world, but if you give her a trip and she switches to Mike Smith, maybe at a price you can use her.
I've been a fan of this mare for a long time. I think Matt Chu does a really good job with all of his stock, and it's an instance where she got really good over the summer last year, and they threw her into the stakes races, and she acquitted herself nicely. The race that concerns me a little bit is that run two back, where I just felt like maybe she was a little bit on the flat side. Now look, she's facing lesser horses than Vasilika and Rimska this time around. Maybe that's all she needs, and this flat mile I think is probably a little bit better, but I'm hopeful to get back to one of those runs from over the summer of 2018. If she does that, I think she's got a chance.
Interesting that race two back came with front bandages on, the first and only time she's ever worn them. Maybe something was amiss going into the race. Speaking of Matt Chu, and I agree with you, he does a great job. He's got Poster Girl right next door, and she can show a little bit of stretch out speed in this spot. Matt Chu is not afraid to test this horse, whether it's 5 furlongs, the next time out it's 1.25 miles, the next time out it's 5 furlongs, the next time out it's synthetic. Have Race Will Travel with Poster Girl, and I thought in the misdirection 2 starts back, she was the victim of that race being turned back to 5 furlongs from the original 6.5, and she just caught Painting Corners, who was loose.
I think she's a little sneaky in here. I picked her second. I think it's an instance where you go through and look at her page. Really, I'm going back to the long layoff last summer, coming off of a year-plus layoff. She came back at 5/8 of a mile. They stretched her out in her second start back. She goes and bang, wins at 17-1. You take a look at that most recent run at Golden Gate. It's off of a little bit of a layoff. She runs evenly enough. They stretch her out in distance here for this race on Saturday afternoon. She's far from the likeliest of winners. And look, throughout her career, she hasn't been a prolific winner. 3 for 22, but I think at the very least she can get a piece at a number.
Last but certainly not least is Achira, who could easily win this race in her third start of the form cycle for trainer John Sheriff. She ran into the aforementioned Mirth last time out. That horse came back to run second in the Possibly Perfect with an 89 Buyer's speed figure. She does have some tactical speed. She has shown speed in the past, and I wonder where that speed's gone. I wonder if John Sheriff is trying to maybe get her in behind horses, get her to rate, and I wonder if actually that's her best tactic.
Yeah, she's kind of an interesting case, too, because you go back to that Santa Anita last year. If she runs that, she's got a giant chance in here. The problem is it's a bit of an outlier on her page. And look, it's still one of those things. I have a difficult time looking at her saying, you haven't been able to get through N2X company. Why should I assume that all of a sudden this is when your breakthrough is going to come?
Let's take a look at our top picks for the Grade 3 Wilshire Stakes. This is just a wide open war. I would probably have to use 4 or 5 in multiple race wagers. Storm the Hill, the defending champion, is a horse coming off a layoff. I hate playing horses like this off of a layoff, but I think she might be the 3rd or 4th price in this race, and at that price, I'll trust Phil D'Amato. I'm going 2, 10, 9, and 5. I'm going to try to beat Ollie's Candy, which is probably a very big mistake.
For me, it was just, I think she's just the best horse in the race. And again, I've been a fan of hers for a long time. And I think now, second start for Sadler, I think you're going to see the best version of her. All my interests are the inside. I went 1, 4, 5, 2.
Fun race, the Grade 3 Wilshire. It's the feature race at the Great Race Place on Saturday. It is race number 8. It is wide open. It is a great betting race. Take advantage with a new DRF Bets account. Sign up at drf.com/bet. Get $150 in risk-free bets. DRF Bets. Ready, set, bet. Approximate post time for the Wilshire, 4:30 Pacific on a Saturday afternoon in Southern California. Good luck.